Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Lunch with the Boxer session. My name is Gina. I'll be your moderator today, and we are very excited on today's session. We have Kim Garrett from our Office of Accommodations and Accessibility here to talk to us and let us know about some of the different resources that we are able to offer. So hi, Kim. How are you?
I'm doing good, Gina. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for hopping in. It's been a full year since we did this last year. So we're very excited to have you. And I know last year, so many of the parents and students had found your sessions so reassuring and just a lot of information for them. And so we're hoping to provide the same kind of resource for this incoming class. So I will go ahead and hand this over to you. But for our families who are here, welcome. Throughout the session, if you have any questions, go ahead and stick it in the chat box. And after Kim is kind of done explaining everything, I will go ahead and ask those questions to her at the end of her presentation. If you're feeling a little shy, you can go ahead and send it to me directly, and I'll read those questions aloud anonymously as well. So thank you, Kim. I will hand this over to you.
All right, thank you. Oh, no, it's not letting me do it. There it went. Hi, welcome. For OAA services. It stands for Office of Accommodation or Accessibility and Accommodation Services. If you need closed captioning, it should be available at the bottom of your screen if you'll click live transcription, and it will ask you to show the subtitles, then you will have closed captioning. So our office is ever changing, and we have just recently hired a new assistant director. Her name is Jamie Updike. So she and I will be sharing in the duties that we provide. So the best way to reach us is through our main kind of general, and I'm typing it into the chat right now. If I can get it right. Okay, let me try this again. All right, we're going to try this. So it's OAA contact or OAA at contact.pacificu.edu. That will go to both me and Jamie. That way, if we're taking some vacation during the month of June, then one or both of us will be able to get that email. So I'm understanding that a lot of you are coming from high school, possibly, or in transition from another university. So the one thing that we encourage you to do is to go ahead and register. Also have your past accommodation records sent to us. So email address again. Oh, sorry. It's OAA at contact.pacificu.edu. Oh, and it's not getting the first part of that. All right, I'm going to try to send it again. Yeah. So one of the other things that Jamie and I do is we try to help get new students on board with housing. So that's kind of a first step that needs to be taken. And if you can get registered and send in your documentation to request your housing accommodations, it's best if we can get that by the 15th. And so we do have an online registration, and I'm going to put that in the chat as well. And you can fill out the new client packet. You can send a documentation form to your provider. So a lot of it is online through DocuSign. So it's really, really advantageous for those of you who are techie at heart. So so basically, yeah, there's a few deadlines that are coming up in May with housing, but otherwise, if you're needing academic accommodations, You can register and send in your 504, an IEP, or your evaluation that you've had, or your doctor's letter, doctor's note, or have them fill out a medical documentation or a medical documentation of disability form through the online, or you can just download the forms. Or, yeah, it's really what is most easiest for your doctor or counselor. Someone who knows you, knows what your needs are, knows what your label is. I always say that because we really don't look at disabilities, we look at how your conditions may impact you. So we're looking to see, what is it that that you may need help with in order to level the playing field. Um, so anyway, so for students out there, we want to encourage you to make sure you're signed in with your Pacific email. If you get a chance to sign in with Box, do that, because that's where we store any of the faculty accommodation notices or the housing accommodation notices, so that you have a copy for your records. We always say that to the parents, you can talk to us as much as you want. If we don't have a release, we will have to answer you in general terms, but we will never leave an email unanswered. So, because we kind of look at this as a transition to college from high school, as kind of riding a tandem bike, where all through grade school, junior high and high school, the parents have been on front and they've been kind of steering everything. And the student has been on the back of the bicycle and reaping the benefits, utilizing the accommodations they needed, sometimes not using accommodations if they have developed coping skills that they feel work better for them. So now at university level, the student is on the front. They're making that transition to be proactive in their own life pursuits. So we always say, however, parents are still on the back of that tandem, because students need a lot of support during that transition year, sometimes 2, sometimes 3. So we always encourage student or parents to stay on the back, but really kind of try and challenge your student. We want you to ask them questions that are going to make the frontal lobe kind of fire up and help them to utilize that executive functioning. If you ask them questions like, so what do you think you should do in this situation? Who do you think you should contact? Do you think you should contact Kim or Jamie? Maybe they can help you, so that you're really giving kind of some edge for them to say, oh yeah, I'm in charge now, I can take this on, I can contact someone who can help me. So I don't know, I think that's it, Jenna. I just want to kind of open it up for questions, because I'm not quite sure who all's here, and
Yeah.
it's really nice to really be able to answer questions.
Yeah, we've got a few that came in. And again, if you have any other questions, feel free to stick it in the chat box, or you can send it to me privately. And I know you talked something about registering. Is this type of registration something that all of our incoming students do, or what type of students need to register?
The registration for OAA services is if you have a condition that impacts your functioning. It can be physical, mental health, learning disabilities, any kind of condition that you feel impacts your ability to function well at the academic level, in housing, socially. You will need to register with our office, and then we can discuss accommodations. You don't always have to use them, but it's a lot harder if we try and put them in place when things start going sideways, rather than having them in place. And then if things start going sideways, then you're like, okay, yeah, I need to use this. Because sometimes coming out of high school, students have developed coping mechanisms, and they haven't had to use some of their accommodations at the very end. when they make a huge transition, a huge change, some of that stuff kind of falls by the wayside, and they have to regroup and make sure that they're able to take those if they need them.
Awesome. And the question that came is, how do you register? And we can go ahead and stick in the chat box one more time, the link to the registration, which I just did right now. And so hopefully that'll help with the registration process. You can just go ahead and hit the link on the chat box. And I can see, I think, Sherry, you might be on iPad and it might be a little bit harder to get to the chat box. So if you want to direct message me your first and last name or your student's name, and then we can email you the links. And if that way you'll have it later on. We can also do that for you as well. I know you're on a tablet, and that's always a little bit more difficult to access the chat function.
Yeah.
One of the other questions that we got is, what type of tutoring do you provide? And is tutoring a part of OAA? How does that work?
Right. So OAA provides what we call academic coaching, and we sometimes provide it in-house, but we also have an academic coach who is employed by Pacific University. And that helps with organizational skills and time management skills. We have a campus-wide tutoring center, and they offer tutoring in most of the academics. And if there's not a tutor for that, or if there's not an app for that, then Josie, who is wonderful, she's the director of this tutoring center, she will reach out to the different departments and try and locate students who are willing to or able to proctor, or not proctor, that's us, able to tutor. So we've been able to really make sure that we have tutors even for some of the upper level division courses. So those are a little bit harder sometimes. If a student then needs more than that, what we can do is check with our student workers, because we have some student workers who are hired who also work for the tutoring center. And sometimes they're willing to add on to the tutoring needs for a student. Other than that, there are some outside tutoring centers. I don't know if there's any more in Forest Grove, or if they're all online now, who can also be self-pay. But we always like for you to check with the tutoring center and then check with OAA, and let's see what we can do before you go to an outside source.
Awesome. And I know you mentioned academic coach, but we've also thrown out the term academic advisor, and there are differences. All of our students will meet with an academic advisor for course registration, and that's advising on the types of classes that they should take towards a specific major. And an academic coach, one more time, Kim, could you explain how that's different from an advisor versus coach?
Yeah. So an academic coach will help a student to kind of navigate through what we call syllabus 101. Sometimes it's difficult for students to get a 5-page syllabus into a workable format, which means, how do they schedule in study time? How do they schedule their classes? How do they make sure that they don't have a lot of overlap? And then making sure that they can adhere to whatever mechanism they set in place, because sometimes it's not enough just to set up that calendar, but then you've got to say, okay, I need to look at that calendar, and then what do I do from there? Time management is kind of that difficult part when you're transitioning from high school, because you feel like you've got all this free time.
Yeah.
And honestly, you really don't, because for each class, I think for each hour of class, you need at least 3 hours of study time. And for individuals with some of the learning challenges, they may need more than that. So really, the academic coach can kind of help set all that up and make systems work for students.
Awesome. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that time management is the biggest hurdle that a lot of our students go to. And that is something we hear every year, is that time management component was really not something that they had expected that they needed to do rigorously and like follow on to be successful in college. So I'm glad you brought that up there.
One of the other things that we do is we will have students come in. Well, when we were pre-COVID, we would have students come in and dump their backpacks on our tables, and they're seas of white. in most cases. Some professors have, multicolored papers and things like that, but in essence, usually it's a sea of white. And so for individuals with certain conditions, color coding really can help. And so if we're going to help them with really just kind of, they come in usually when they're really stressed and at their rope's end with how to manage everything they've got to manage over the weekend. And so we take a colored piece of paper rather than a white piece of paper, and we say, okay, what do you need to get done first, second, third, fourth? And so then we give them, usually we use green paper. I don't know why, but it gives them something in that sea of white that they can say, okay, here's my list. Here's what I need to do next. Here's what time I've set up to do this. And in most cases, it really helps if they abide by, kind of staying with that schedule to help them get over those really stressful hurdles.
Absolutely. Thank you. And those are some great tips, even just within those that last conversation there, Kim. So thank you. What you talked a little bit about housing and OAA and getting a single room. What type of student, and this is a question that we as admissions counselors get every year, how or what type of students get a single room at Pacific if they're living on campus?
Yeah, there are multiple reasons why a student may need a single room and also access to a private bathroom. Some individuals have had transplant surgeries. Other individuals have difficulty with social interaction, and it's better if they have a place where they can go and get some quiet time. Individuals with migraine headaches oftentimes will request single abodes. If we have an individual with learning differences, sometimes just having that quiet space will help them as well. So there's just a variety of reasons. We just always have to have that from a doctor, therapist, psychiatrist, someone who is familiar with that person to designate that they do need a single resident. Because I think everybody's is kind of not, we're concerned if a student were to say, I need a single room, who has maybe depression or anxiety, and they need that single, but they also need that social support. So we just really feel that if their doctor is on board, then we feel confident that they're going to do okay in that single room. And then their RA and their AC, which is the resident assistants who are other students in the residence halls, and then the AC, who is an area coordinator, they can kind of, keep tabs with that person, make sure everything's going okay. These are not easy times.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And it's good to hear that we have that type of support. You talked about a release, and we haven't really touched on that component of the conversation yet. For a lot of our families, this is the first child, or they're guardians of a student, and when it's their first time going off to college. And this is when we start hearing a lot of this legal jargon. And you mentioned how parents can email and contact you, and you can talk in general terms unless there is a release. What is this release, and what does it mean if the parent is still, if they're still a dependent, if the student is still a dependent on the family, doesn't that mean that the family has access to all this information? So I know it's not kind of the FERPA and all those releases, not really your area of expertise, but with the OAA, how does that release form work, and what can parents do?
Right. Well, we are under FERPA, and so the students have a right to their privacy with regards to information about their disability and information about the accommodations, and about other areas of schooling, which OAA really doesn't get into, but in some cases we might have that information. So we are putting it on the student to then say, okay, I feel comfortable sharing this with my parents. And so we have a consent to release form in the new client packet, which is part of that registration online. And it will give the student the option to sign a release for housing for faculty, deans, and directors. for parents and for CPS. So those are kind of the 4 areas that the student can select from, and they can always select all of them if they want. So, but it is up to the student. But again, I really feel like the parents are the first ones that hear the student scream. And so we always encourage parents to let us know. And that way, at least we, like I said, we might be able to only respond to them in general terms, but then we will know what's going on. And then we can reach out to some of the other supports that are here under student affairs, student life now, but we're hoping to change it to student affairs, so that we can then help them with all of those undercurrents that go on, in addition to the academic pursuits.
Awesome. And I put in a link in the chat that takes you to the U.S. Department of Education, explaining what exactly FERPA is. It stands for, and I have to Google this every year, Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. And so there are several releases that are going to be kind of coming your way with students entering into college, that because there is that transition from child to adult. They're no longer considered a minor at a certain point. And so all of that kind of stuff gets there's a lot of gray areas in between. And so these releases are what helps, but it's definitely worth it to have a conversation as a family beforehand, so that everybody is on board and understands what type of communication is available for each other. So thank you for that. I don't have too many other questions that are popping in here. If you guys have questions, go ahead and enter it in the chat, and you can send it to me privately and I can read them aloud anonymously, or you can send it so that everybody can read it. A common question that we get in our office is questions about emotional support animals. Are they allowed on campus? And is that something that we are able to do through the OAA, or is that a different department?
That is done through OAA, and then once we get the appropriate paperwork, then we can send a request to housing, and they will get a contract signed with the student to make sure that the animal is vaccinated and has someone. I think they have them designate someone to take care of them in case the student cannot. So there's just a lot of involvement in making sure that the animal is safe as well. But absolutely, we encourage companion animals. And there's a form, I think it's online. I'll have to double check with Jamie. She's my techie guru, to make sure. But anytime you need a form and you can't find it under the forms section on our website, please feel free, just email that OAA at contact.pacificu.edu, and we can get those to you ASAP. So one other thing I want to stress is that the registration with OAA is not complete until we have both the initial interview, the consent to release, and the documentation. So a lot of times parents are the gatekeepers for that documentation. So we encourage, if you want, you can send it to that OAA at connect. No, I said it. OAA at contact.pacificu.edu email address, and we will get it. That will start a file, and then we'll just request that the student complete the new client packet. So all those things have to kind of be in place before we can actually issue formal accommodation requests.
Awesome. So it does sound like it might be a couple of steps and a little bit of a process rather than just a fill out a registration form and you're one and done type of thing. So definitely throughout the summer, it's best to make sure that you are reading your emails, and that's something that we tell students every year. And one of the questions that came in, for questions about a unique circumstance, is it best to contact you directly, or is the OAA, because it's you and Jamie, really that are kind of monitoring that? Should they just go ahead and email the OAA, or would you prefer that they email you directly? Or
you can do either or, but if I'm on vacation or Jamie's on vacation, and we are monitoring each other's emails, it's just a lot easier. It gives you one email address to remember. Yes. And I know for certain that both Jamie and I are checking that. I mean, it comes directly to our boxes. So it's actually, in essence, a direct contact to me and Jamie at the same time. And then every base has been covered, and that you're going to get a response, maybe from both of us. You never know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can say that working with Kim and her office, the response time has always been super fast and prompt. And so reaching out to that email, I think would be the best option. And outside of filling out the packet, yeah, any type of questions that you have. And I know, Kim, that you have actually met with a couple of families that previously who had some questions. And so go ahead and email, and throughout the conversation, if they feel like it might be better to have a private Zoom meeting, I'm sure the OAA office would be more than happy to work with families on that. So yes, definitely email that address, and then we'll make sure that Kim and Jamie is able to help you out. One of the questions.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
No, absolutely. Yeah, we have an OAA virtual office on Zoom. We were one of the first offices to set one of those up. So we can definitely set up a Zoom meeting and yeah, answer all the questions you have.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And kind of going back to the tutoring topic, is there a writing lab for students who might benefit from some help with written assignments? I know it's a little bit more specific to a type of resource. Is that something that we have available?
Yes, so the Tutoring and Learning Center, or it's not called that anymore, it's called Class. And so, yeah, Josie has a writing lab as well. So she'll have specific tutors who are working within the writing lab. And I think everything is virtual right now. So I don't know what that is going to look like. Hopefully
Yeah,
we get
and I'm going to in the chat, I also oops, there we go. That's the page to our class, which is our tutoring services, and this goes specifically to writing resources. And so these are just some resources, but we also have that tutoring available for students. So on that same page, you can click through some of the different resources, and then if you click on tutoring, it'll also allow you students to schedule a tutoring appointment. And so that's something that students can do directly. So hopefully that kind of helps with talking about like the writing assignments. I know that's kind of the biggest challenge for a lot of our students when they first come to college. So another question is slightly shifting gears. If my student has a food allergy that is life-threatening, how would my student's roommate situation and cafeteria food be handled? And I think this is a great question because it can be the difference of life and death for some students.
Right. So the housing department has a certain food waiver process that the student must go through. They can also register with OAA services, but they don't have to. I guess the housing, I don't think they post that waiver. I think you have to actually email housing, and it's housing@pacificu.edu. And then request a food waiver. So the difference is if you have a food allergy that is serious, meaning life-threatening, that's sometimes an automatic for housing, unless food services can work with that student to help them get the food that they need with their account. So what they're looking at is to try and help students not to have to cook for themselves, worry about buying food. So through the food service, the dining service, they can purchase food and have it delivered to the student. They can prepare it for the student, but again, it depends on, if the preparation needs to be like, what is the one, oh, I can't remember right now, but where the students can receive refrigerator space and a cabinet in their kitchen, in their residence hall room. And then it's their responsibility to clean the area, make sure that it's cleaned, and to have their own utensils and things like that so that they're not contaminated. So that is a way for housing to accommodate those students. If there's a roommate, yeah, that's, I think, a little trickier, because I know in food service, sometimes they have a really difficult time with peanut allergies, because some students will come through and they'll take the peanut butter knife and put it over into the jelly space. So you want to, any cross contamination like that, you want to avoid. I would think the same would go with your roommates. So yeah, in cases like that, if there are nut allergies, I don't know. I think I would go through OAA and request a single room. That way, the student has more control over the kitchen space. It'll still be a shared kitchen, but they'll have their own area. They will know they have to clean up, before they do anything, and then I think it's safer for them. Does that answer the question? If there's, yeah, that's a kind of a tricky situation, because going through housing and also OAA, we don't want it to be like, hurdles that you have to jump through, but we do want the best for the students. And we also want students to feel like they can come here and have that experience of having, their food prepared, or, whatever they can do. If that's something that they can do within their restrictions, then we want to be able to help them to do that.
Thank you. And we've had students in the past, so that has gone through different types of resources and procedures. And so definitely reach out if you're unsure of whether or not OAA needs to be involved, or just have dining involved. It's always best to reach out and say like, hey, this is our situation. Do you think it's worth it to register with OAA, or do you think it should be okay? It doesn't ever hurt to ask us, and we'll be more than happy to forward along the questions to Kim, who is the expert, and will be able to kind of help you with that. So when in doubt, always ask, and we'll be always happy to help.
That's what I say. And when I am in my office, I actually answer my phone. If I'm available. Lately, of course, we've been, trying to do as much remote. And today I'm out in Hillsborough. We have a proctoring center over here. We are doing a refurbish on our exam rooms. We have new carpet, new paint, new desks. We're just so excited to be able to welcome students back, to be able to proctor their exams we're still in Clark Hall, but to be able to proctor them in their individual rooms. And so we're so excited. We're so ready to be back on campus.
Yes, I'm excited for you. All that stuff is always nice. And I know for a lot of our students, it's going to be another transition back, right? Being remote for so long, and then kind of going back to the quote unquote normal, or the pre-COVID days that we've seen. I know that in itself will also be a transition. So I know your office is going to be a huge help for a lot of our students that are coming in. So
we're ready for it.
Awesome. I don't have too many other questions coming in, so I think that's good that we got through all the questions and we were able to answer them. Again, if you have any questions, you can email Kim and her team at oaacontact@pacificu.edu. And I'm putting it back in that chat box there. And that will get into both Jamie and Kim's inboxes.
Okay.
So
and it is OAA at contact.
Yes,
OAA
at contact.
Right. Yeah. So a little bit different.
Just a little bit different. And don't forget the U after Pacific. That's always a mistake. A lot of our new families forget, where they just go pacific.edu. That does go to a different university in another state. So make sure to go pacificu.edu, and that'll come to us in Oregon. So any other maybe last minute advice that you'd like to give to parents or students before we sign off today?
Yeah, I think communication is the key. I always tell students, if you don't, I can't always fix everything, but if you don't tell me, I can't even try. Yes. So, we've been able to do so many different things with so many different conditions, be they temporary or permanent, to make things happen for students. And so the best way to get something that is standing in your way out of your way, I'm thinking in terms of a student that cut her hand right before finals, and we were able to do scribing for her, and it made so much difference, because she had a very difficult time typing, a very difficult time writing, and so we were able to kind of swoop in, and we have student workers that work for us, and so we were able to help her out. So one last thing too is that we also have about 17 to 18 student workers that work for us. So if they have any interest, I guess, in working for us, have them apply. And I think it is on, shoot, how do they apply for our jobs these days?
Yeah, so they can just go to our website, which is pacificu.edu.
All
Just
right.
scroll all the way to the bottom, at the very, very bottom. And if you click on the link that says careers, it'll take you to the page. And then you have two options: student workers or faculty staff positions. Go ahead and click on the student worker page, and all the jobs that we have on campus will be posted there. Currently, probably not a lot of jobs for fall are up there. I don't think we're quite that far ahead yet. I would say fall jobs would probably start opening up when it's closer to when the start of school happens. So don't worry about applying for jobs right now for fall, but is a website that students can go to, and it sounds like Kim's office houses a significant number of students, and even our student workers actually have used and gotten help from OAA in the previous years, and have told me how accommodating, and they were able to get everything for to help them with their tests, or classroom, being anywhere from having to have a front row seat reserved all the way to the scribing and all of that stuff. So lots of different resources that we have. So
Absolutely.
yeah, well, thank you so much, Kim, for hopping in. We absolutely appreciate you doing that. I know you are in between both campuses, so I know things can get fairly busy. So we appreciate you taking the time to talk with our new incoming families here today.
All right. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Absolutely. And then for our families, next week, we will have Denise Giesbers. She is going to come in and talk about orientation. It's going to be mostly pre-orientation information. There's not going to be a lot of specifics yet. I know we're still working on finalizing dates and how move-in is going to work. So this was going to be more like a general kind of Q&A about presentation or orientation this fall. And I know a lot of questions are coming up with that. So again, it'll be mostly general information, but the director will be here to answer questions. And I'm sure when it's closer to orientation date, we're going to have another kind of overview with some more of that specific information. But we know a lot of you guys have questions right now. So we did ask her to hop in a little bit early. So join us next week when we have Denise Giesbers talk to us about orientation. Have a great rest of the day, everybody. We appreciate you hopping in here, and we'll see you next week. Take care and have a good day.